tree to fell, the next step is to choose the felling direction. If the tree is leaning, or if the branches are hanging mostly in one direction, then it's easiest to fell the tree in that direction. If it's windy, you also have to consider the wind direction when you plan felling. Avoid trees that are close to power lines, buildings, or public roads. If there are other people nearby, make sure the safety distance is at least twice the height of the tree. Clear the ground around the tree to give yourself room to work. You should also clear your path of retreat behind the tree. When the tree falls, you have to move a few yards back into one side in case the root end springs up. Cut down any low branches that could get in the way, but remember, you must never cut higher than shoulder height. Once again, don't stand directly behind the saw. Think of the danger of kickback and use the trunk as a shield between you and the saw. To fell a tree in the right direction, we use a technique called directional felling. This means that you cut a hinge or a joint that forces the tree to fall in the direction you've chosen. To create this hinge, you must first cut a wedge-shaped piece out of the trunk on the same side to which you want the tree to fall. This is called the directional cut. The next cut, the felling cut, is made on the opposite side. However, you must not cut all the way through. Instead, you leave a strip that acts as a hinge and steers the tree in the right direction. First, you make the top directional cut and then the bottom one. It's very important here that the bottom directional cut is not too deep. It must meet the top cut exactly without being too deep or too shallow. The depth of the directional cut should be about 1/5 of the diameter of the trunk, and the inside angle must be at least 90 degrees so that the hinge can steer the tree all the way to the ground. The felling cut is made slightly higher up than the point of the directional cut. The hinge that's left must be at least 1 1/4 inches wide. Seen from above, the felling cut looks like this. You bring the saw in from the side and then cut through the trunk. Before you complete the felling cut, you must drive in a wedge or a pry bar to prevent the tree from leaning back and trapping the saw. A pry bar also makes it easier to fell the tree. If the diameter of the tree is less than the length of the bar, you can make the felling cut in one stage from the back of the tree. This is naturally easier and safer. We therefore recommend that you don't fell trees with a diameter larger than the length of the bar if you're a beginner. Decide exactly where you want the tree to fall. If you fell the tree across a log, rock, or stump, you get a safe and comfortable working height for limbing and cross-cutting. Stand with your feet apart behind the tree, with your left shoulder supported against the trunk, and look straight ahead in the felling direction. Start by making the top directional cut. Line up the saw by aiming along the front handle. On a John Surred saw, the handle is exactly at a right angle to the bar. Make sure the thumb of your left hand is gripping the handle, apply full throttle, and bring the chain diagonally downwards at an angle of about 60 degrees. Make the cut about 1/5 of the diameter of the trunk. Start high enough up to leave yourself space for the bottom cut. Remain in the same position and make the bottom directional cut. Brace your right elbow inside of your right knee. Apply full throttle before you start the cut, controlling the throttle with your right thumb. Make the bottom cut diagonally upwards to meet the inner end of the top cut. If you look down the top cut, you can see exactly where the two cuts meet. Before you make the felling cut, you should make sure you have enough fuel. Running out of fuel in the middle of the felling cut could be dangerous. Again, with your right elbow braced against the inside of your right knee, start cutting from the side of the trunk and then move backwards around the tree. Leave a hinge with a uniform width of at least 1 1/4 inches. When the felling cut is just over halfway completed, you should stop the saw and insert a pry bar before you finish the cut. Make sure the chain doesn't touch the pry bar. Put the saw aside and lift the pry bar, keeping your back straight. Use your thigh muscles to lift. When the tree starts to fall, you should move a few yards backwards and to one side to get clear of the root end in case it bounces up. Here you can see the proof of a job well done, a perfect hinge. Once the tree is lying on the ground, you can start limbing. This can be dangerous if not done properly. Always remember to keep an encircling grip around the front handle with your left thumb. Watch the tip of the bar to avoid snagging on a hidden branch. Remember the kickback hazard. Always apply full throttle before starting to cut. If you've managed to fell the tree over a log, rock, or stump, you'll have a safe and comfortable working height. You should always stand on the left side of the trunk when you're limbing. Start at the root end and let the trunk support the saw as much as possible to save you effort. Always hold the saw on the other side of the trunk to protect yourself when you change position. Any thick branches that stick out from the trunk should be cut downwards with a pulling chain. Rest the body of the saw against the trunk so that the bar pivots down onto the branch. Branches on top of the trunk can be cut with the saw resting on its side, either with a pushing or a pulling chain. Use your right thumb to control the throttle. Conifers often have thinner, more numerous branches than broadleaf trees. Here you can alternate between a pulling and a pushing chain. Note that the saw rests on the trunk all the time. When limbing with a pushing chain on the same side as you're standing, you can support the saw with your leg. Heavy branches that are pressing on the ground must be cut from below using a pushing chain to prevent the saw being trapped. First, make a shallow cut in the top of the branch to stop it splitting, then cut it off from below. Watch out in case it springs towards you when it breaks. Really heavy or uneven branches are easier to cut in stages. Cut them into manageable lengths right away. First, make a cut in the underside and then cut from above. But remember never to cut above chest height. When you've limbed the trunk all the way to the tip, you can turn it over and limb the underside. Try to support the stem on a rock or stump to give yourself a comfortable working height. Now we'll cut the trunk into manageable lengths. Again, there are some important points to think about. Where will the length you're cutting go when it breaks off? And what will happen to the rest of the tree when you cut off a large heavy length? Watch your feet. If the end of the trunk is unsupported, then you obviously have to cut it from above. But first, make a shallow cut underneath to prevent it splitting. Then cut down straight through the trunk to meet this cut. If, on the other hand, the trunk is supported at both ends, you must cut it from below. First, make a shallow cut on top before cutting from below. Always remember to keep an encircling grip around the front handle with your left thumb. Apply full throttle before you start cutting. Cut as close to the saw body as possible, and remember to stand to the left side of the saw, not directly behind it. If your saw gets pinched in the cut, you must never try to shake it free while the engine is running. Instead, you should switch off the engine and pry open the cut to free the saw. Work calmly and methodically. Think ahead.